It is now 5:30. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Charter Review Committee for the City of Bel Air Beach for March the 25th, 2020. Okay, it's a roll call, I guess. I want to get it right on the last meeting.
Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn,
Here.
Councilmember Dave Gaddis,
Here.
Councilmember Mark Bean, Councilmember Jody Shirley, Mayor Joseph Manzo,
Present on the phone.
Mr. Stanley Sofer,
Here.
Mr. Michael Zabel,
Here.
and Councilmember Robin Aki is not present. Councilmember Mark Bean is not present. Councilmember Jody Shirley is not present. And Mr. Burke Serafian is not present.
Do we have a
And
quorum?
City Attorney Fred Riley.
Present.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the previous meeting for March the 18th.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to accept the minutes of the March 18th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. I believe the floor belongs to the city attorney. Fred, I think you're on to go over your notes. I think everybody has a copy of his notes. If you've read them. Yes. Mike, you've read them. Glenn, you've read them. So, are there any, open the floor up to questions on it, or are you welcome to speak on the topic?
Okay, let me make sure, Mayor Manzo, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I could not hear Stan very well. Stan, you're either going to have to speak up or you're going to have to get this microphone closer or something, because, I mean, I'm catching a couple of words and I'm kind of know what you're saying, but I really don't. So,
I think I do that on
debate
purpose
anything.
because
I need
you're
to
not
hear
here.
it. Don't make me come down there.
You heard that, didn't you? Amazing. That was a test. Okay,
Okay.
he can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Let me say just a couple things and then I have a question. The couple things are, one, I profusely apologize for the delay in getting this to you. It's the last couple of weeks have been challenging. What I tried to do in doing this memorandum is take the input that you had provided and then make some recommendations, and my thing's always going to be the same. I recommend as few changes as I possibly can, and then I also want to tell you why I made some of the recommendations, and I've also I talked to Chairman Stan earlier in the day, and I also talked to Vice Mayor Gunn, and in talking to both of them, got a lot better clarity about several things that really helped me with the process. Having said that, I put in what I would suggest the ballot language would be, and there's a provision in the charter that specifies, for purposes of having these amendments considered, what you need to do to include the ballot language, and so this is consistent with that. My question is, has everybody had a chance to read over the memo that I sent? Because if you have, it just is a matter of us discussing any questions or points you may have and how you want to handle it. And if one or more people have not read it, then I can simply go from point to point on what I address.
I've read it. I believe Vice Mayor Gunn has read it. Dave, have you read it?
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah.
Mayor, have you read it?
I have not read it. I saw it, but I didn't get a chance to go through it.
Okay, well, just so for purposes of everybody understanding what I addressed, let me go over this kind of page by page, and I don't think it'll take that long, but we can stop whenever we need to if there's things you want to discuss further. The first thing that I addressed was the proposed amendment concerning the strategic plan, and I have the language that Vice Mayor Gunn had proposed, and the thing that I was not aware of until him and I had the conversation today is that it's my understanding that the City Council last March discussed this being included as a fundamental point, which would be a charter type provision. So, I don't have any great misgiving about doing that. The thing I would tell you is in putting this into the charter, do you want to do it on an annual basis? Do you want to do it on a periodic basis? Do you want to do it on a 5-year basis? And that's really, if you do want it in the charter, that's a decision that y'all should discuss and then make the recommendation on how you want to handle it. And of course, that's in addition to whether you want it in the charter. I also think you could do it by creating an ordinance and having it in your code, but the discussion that I had with Vice Mayor Gunn was this was something the council thought should be a fundamental task that was done on an annual or periodic basis. So, are there any questions about that?
Not from me. Anybody else like to discuss that point?
Really, the only question that I had was, I see where the proposed ballot question is, but I don't really understand where this is going to be amended. Where would this appear?
He's got it in section 9.
I see that, but I mean, is there a number that will be added?
Well, it would be a new provision, so it's simply an addition to the charter.
And I think one of the questions we had discussed before was that being a separate section altogether, which would make it section 11. And that's a question that we need to address tonight.
And the only problem that I see with making it 11 is that it sort of reads backwards because it's not mentioned in the budget. I know that we didn't want to be too strict on how we determine the budget, but at the same time, it sort of still winds up in a strange area. Lynn, whenever we were discussing this at the last meeting, one of the things that I asked for was where would it appear and how would it be worded. And I remember, I saw what you sent out to this committee, but I still didn't understand exactly where that was going to appear.
Because I didn't spend a lot of time looking at it. There was some discussion about whether it should be in the budget section or a standalone. My feeling is it should be a standalone with a reference in the budget, basically saying, hey, in agreement with whatever section addresses the strategic plan. It's reviewed prior to starting the budget cycle.
Patty?
Mayor, did you want to make a comment?
I could barely hear what was going on here. I didn't hear a lot of what was said, but I will say this. I think my comment from last time was just that we would use this as a guideline. I think it can be done with an ordinance and not with the charter if we're pressed, and I'm not sure how many items are actually going to make it to the ballot. So this to me would be, I think it's something that we should put in, because I do think that, even though it was part of the strategic plan that we follow it. I think it does need to be reviewed each year. We've not done that, and we can do that via an ordinance. But if we could skip it with charter, we might want to save that powder for for some of the items that really do have to change via charter.
It's just my comment is that right now, the way that our charter is laid out, it really needs to be inserted before discussing the budget.
Yeah, I was just kind of thumbing through, and a good place might be section 2, legislative, which is basically the council, right? So it talks about meetings, it talks about how business is conducted, and an overarching principle of the legislative would be the strategic plan is utilized as a guideline and an evaluation tool for the budget, all management decisions, business, that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
He's going to have trouble hearing you if you don't speak directly.
Hey, Mayor.
We got a pretty
Yeah.
good screen in this thing for him.
Yeah, this is Marv. I can't hear nothing at home. I'm going to see if I can sneak into the meeting at City Hall. Yeah, I mean, with this technology ain't working. It really is not working.
No,
I mean, this is pathetic. After 2 weeks, this is as good as we can do. I'm a little disgusted. I'm about ready to make a motion to say we can't have this meeting because I can't hear it. And you should be able to hear this from remotely, and I can't hear it. I could hear Marv loud and clear, and I could hear it when somebody spoke directly into this mic. But I'm missing it.
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to City Hall. You might not look what I look like, but at this point, it doesn't matter.
Everybody dials in
Okay.
to go meeting.
Well, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to just dial in to go to meeting. And if you guys will stay there, we'll just call you. Can we do that? Mayor?
Joe, can you hear me right now?
Hello.
Can you hear me, Joe?
Yeah, I could hear it. It's very echoey, but I could hear it. That's better.
Okay, I make a motion that we pause this meeting for 2 or 3 minutes and pick up our phones and continue.
Yeah, and Marv, I think Marv Beam just said, I don't know if you could hear him, but he said he was on his way to to City Hall because he just wants to be there and hear it. He could not hear either, so.
Patty, do you have the number?
Yes, it's right there by the phone. It's just, Fred, how do we do this? Is it a recess? Do we have to say anything, or can we just dial?
Will we have a forum tomorrow?
It was the go-to-meeting number, is that what you got?
Ready? Excuse me. 872, I'm sorry, it's 1-872.
1872?
240-3212. Do you need the code when you dial in, Dave?
Yes.
Are you ready for the code? 961-411-485. If it asks me for the audio, it's £7, I think. If it asks me.
Let the volume down on the speakerphone. I'm in.
Well, I mean, we can all stay in these microphones in the room, right? I mean, you can just listen to me. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, this is Stan, can you hear me?
Very good, very good.
Do we need to keep this on speaker? Or do we-
The first I've heard you in 2 weeks.
You need to visit more often.
Sure, this virus.
Dave?
We're going to do this without speaker. Okay, I need somebody to show me how to get it off there. iPhone or Android? Maybe the Android experts over there? We're getting there.
I'm here.
We have a forum in the room with Mark.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. This is going to go forward. Joe, you can hear all this. You want to do a roll call? Fred, would you try to take it on? Okay, Glenn?
I'm here, Glenn's here.
Dave? Here? Table's here?
Please enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign.
Basically, what we have right now, Fred's going through, we started with the strategic.
To enable audio controls, please enter your audio PIN followed by the...
Before, he's got 5 different proposed ballot questions on here. And he's made his recommendation. He's going to go through each one of his suggestions and tell us what is in there, as well as proposed language for ballot. Fred, did you have anything more to go on as far as the strategic plan? Because we were talking about that when we changed over.
Yours. Okay, well, I'll recap what I had said just a few minutes ago. I had said that I discussed this with Vice Mayor Gunn, and it was my understanding that there was a discussion last March in 2019 about this being a fundamental thing going forward, and you can do it as a charter amendment, which would be an addition. You can not include it as a charter amendment, and you could do the same thing by ordinance, which would make it a part of the city code. And you have options depending on which way you want to handle it. If you're going to include it either as a charter provision or as a code, the thing that I would question is how often do you want to do it? Do you want to do it annually, or do you want to do it on a periodic basis, or every 5 years, or what time period would be appropriate? And that's open for your discussion. The other point that was raised, and I'm saying this mostly for Mayor Joe because I know he couldn't hear it, but where in the charter should it be included if it's going to be included in the charter? And Vice Mayor Gunn was suggesting before we kind of shifted gears that it be in Article 2, which would be before the budgeting process. So that's where we left the conversation.
I guess let me just toss in one other thing, which I don't think we've resolved. Even if we went forward with this and said, let's put it in the charter, we haven't decided which priority it gets. Is it a 1A, 1B, a 2, or a 3? And that would possibly force us, let's say, for example, we said this was a priority 2. That's going to force us into making it into an ordinance, at least at first, until we can come back around and grab it on the charter.
Yeah, this is going. It seems like the appropriate question.
Can't hear you.
I can't hear Glenn. I think you're muted.
How's it?
How's that?
Much better.
Much better. Hey, Section 2.1 2.045 general powers, duties of the mayor and city council, it would make sense that under 2.045B council, there would be a paragraph that basically talks about the responsibilities of the council to utilize a strategic plan. I mean, the city charter is supposed to be the bedrock of how the city conducts business and administers the business of the city of Bel Air Beach. The strategic plan is actually part of that bedrock. It's not something to be kicked down the road to an ordinance or relegated to a secondary position. This is how we're supposed to do business. It was the vision of the prior council to institutionalize it so that it's not kicked down the road or I think in a subservient priority here. The amendment as I drafted it kind of tells the purpose, it tells the why and how it's used, and it tells the process for review and why you update this thing. Because things change in the environment. Environmentally, demographically, politically, economically, things change, and it's up to the council to review it on a frequent basis, at least annually, and prior to the budget cycle, because the budget at the end of the day is that final thing that the council uses as a vehicle to administer the business of the city. So it's the acid test, it's the litmus test for the council to ensure that all business decisions made in the budget align and agree with the priorities set forth in the strategic plan. That's a purpose. We don't need to be resold on this. You've gone through all this. But there appears to be some contradiction because the mayor's saying, well, is this a priority 2 or 3? We haven't agreed on the priority of it. And my feeling is it's certainly a higher priority than giving the mayor the ability to make a motion. So I guess there's some concerns about what's the priority of this. Mayor, is that correct? Didn't you question whether there should be a priority 2 and taken care of by an ordinance?
Well, yes, we have not said what the priority should be, and I have no problem making it this. But again, I was the one who brought this up and got shot down with it earlier in the year. So, are we all in on it? Or are we not all in on it? And quite frankly, you could have this is making a major supposition here that there's going to be a strategic plan. I like our strategic plan. I wasn't on council and I didn't have a chance to vote for it. I brought up the idea of reaffirming it. It was shot down. But I would have voted to reaffirm it. Okay? I think 95% of what's in there is good and it should continue. And it should be, as Glenn just said, the absolute bedrock for all of our decision making. It's not, but it should be. Okay? So I have no problem with that, doing it. But that's not to say that 3 years from now, a different council may come in and say, scrap the whole strategic plan. And now we have something in our charter referencing a strategic plan that may not even exist. There you get into your trouble.
That happens before you can get into that. You're right, because this meeting's been shanghaied for one particular item in the strategic plan, and we've done a lot of work on it, and I don't want us to have to go to another meeting. So I think your point may be well taken. That was the whole purpose of institutionalizing the strategic charter, because it's supposed to be a bedrock portion of the charter. It's not up to a future council to get rid of the strategic plan. They have the ability to amend it or change it in light of changing conditions. But the city should always have a strategic plan. It should be looking down the road and not just dealing with the emergency of the day or managing the price of boat slips or the community calendar, whether it's going to be a car show this month or a boat show next month.
Okay, agree. Zabel again. I still think we're sitting on target. Let's go back to a standpoint.
Yeah, you're not transmitting. I'm sorry.
Okay, Zabel,
Okay,
had my mute on. Let's get back to the main issues, handle those, go back to this topic at the end. Again, we're being Shanghai, let's focus.
Let's get
on what the attorney's done, his comments, and then we can address, the input of the vice mayor. What is the consensus of the? It's like a cone of silence. As it gets smart in the cone of silence. I remember that. It never worked, right? Okay, technology is not working for any of us at the moment. Is there a consensus on the committee right now to proceed with everything else and then come back to the strategic committee?
Yes.
Strategic plan. Yes. I agree with that. Joe? Yes. We have a consensus plan? Okay. Let's go forward. Fred, if you don't mind, skip to the next one. And we'll come back to the strategic plan at the end. Okay. The next one is the recommendation related to section 1.02, which has a scrivener's error in it. The thing I would suggest to you is simply have the city clerk and city manager send a letter to Unicode and ask them to correct the error. If that doesn't solve the problem, and I think the solution is next year or the year afterwards to have it be a charter amendment. The thing that I would tell you, there's no provision for scrivener's error in the charter. There's only provision for amendments. I thought we'd already scrapped this one and said it was a priority 2 or 3. We said it could be moved to another, if we didn't have room, we could move it. But the attorney was going on the original list. I think he just answered that. So we're not going to put that as a valid provision at this time. If we have to, let the city manager go ahead and write a letter to Unicode. If we have to, we can come back at a later time and put it in the chart. Put it as a valid question. We just make the correction then, basically. Correct. And that may save us one valid item. Yeah. Okay, then the next one is section 2.02, which is elections and terms. The portion that I was looking at deleted a whole lot of language related to the how town council members will be elected into the terms, and then it added a provision related to basically term limits, which is for executive terms. So I included a recommendation on how we can change that, which is simply leave everything the way it is and add the limit at the end. I think that's a more right way of doing it. Sequencing that up in the existing charter provision is still applicable, and I just don't think you need to gut all that for purposes of getting rid of 2012, 2013. I would leave it the way it is and add the term limit. It'll yield to the committee members. So basically, if I understand you correctly, you're just saying we need to strictly discuss putting a term limit in there and not trying to change the other verbiage. Yes, sir. Works for me. Okay, let's do that. Okay, the next one is on section 2.045, and this is the powers and duties of the mayor and city council. You deleted the So in the next sentence, it deleted mayor and inserted presiding officer. And I simply put the ballot language. That one is fine with me, but the way it is, I only have a question about like why you wanted to delete mayor and put in presiding officer, and I'm sure there's a reason.
Yeah, I can tell you the reason on that is because we have that problem right now with mayor. Everybody talks about passing the gavel. If I pass the gavel, I'm still the mayor, and it says the mayor can't make a motion, which most cities that don't have strong mayors, the mayor can make a motion. In fact, every mayor I spoke to said, you got to change this. So it is something that we're unique on, and not for a good reason. So if you leave it as mayor can't make a motion, even if I pass the gavel, all I'm doing is passing the presiding officer piece of it. I'm not passing the title. So the idea, or I'm going to say me, there's going to be 2 or 3 more mayors before the next 10 years. But if you make it presiding officer, that allows that whole pass the gavel thing, which is what most cities seem to do when the mayor wants to make a motion.
Okay, that's fine, and I understand the rationale now. Hold on. I'm going to go there's a problem with the mayor, so I was waiting to hear what came next. That was a joke that went nowhere.
You know what's hard about the joke is it sounds like Yankee Stadium because everything you say gets echoed because there's a speakerphone on it over there. And so I won't make any more jokes. It's okay. It was funny the first time. Right. The next one is section 2406 related to vacancies, and I changed that slightly because you put in council meetings, budget sessions, work sessions during a rolling 12-month period. The language that I inserted is slightly different, and it just says regular meetings, budget sessions, or work sessions. I took out the portion about at council discretion because I think the problem with that is that it could be applied in an arbitrary manner, and that's not a really good legal standard, something that can be applied arbitrarily. One council member misses 4 meetings, and because like her, you say a word, another council member misses 4 meetings, and he's a little bit on the costly side, so you remove him. That's arbitrary, and you should avoid doing stuff like that. So that's why I made the change, and you can comment from here on out as you see fit.
This is Glenn here. I think part of the reason was to leave a little subjectivity or a final vote by the council so that if there are extenuating or mitigating circumstances for those absences, a death in the family, dialysis, cancer treatment, I don't know what, major surgery, that it may not just be a hard and fast draconian, we're going to drop the guillotine blade on you, but hey, we want you to consider the circumstances, and that's kind of the guideline is missing for during that 12-month period, but somehow the wording should be the final vote by the council to affirm that yes, those are the circumstances, and there's no room for subjective discretion. Yes, no. I think that was it.
No, Glenn, I think that's exactly what we had discussed. That was very well stated. That I think we just wanted, Fred. I think the idea was just to keep a little bit of a opening there. If a person who misses 4 intentionally because they just don't want to show up, that person wouldn't get much relief from the council. But a person like Glenn said, I mean, if you have a medical issue, or you could conceivably in the space of a month's time or 2 months' time miss 4 meetings, and maybe you had perfect attendance prior to that, and you just had a medical issue or something that called you away. So it wasn't to really punish the good performer; it was to try and get rid of the poor performer. So I don't know how we can.
But it's my understanding that get rid of somebody, to call, okay, you've missed 4 meetings. Isn't it the call of the council at that time to remove someone from office? Is that cut and dried that if he missed 4 meetings, he's out?
Yes, this is a shall forfeit provision. I mean, it's not, we don't even have to affirm it. It's a shall forfeit.
Well, that what Mayor Jones saying is correct. You as the council members shall forfeit his office if the following apply. So that's the way that it provision up, and then you have the conditions that could be fulfilled. And the condition of felony, for instance, there's no council discretion in that. If you commit a felony, then you're at your office.
What about this? What if 4 meetings are missed, and then by charter it requires a council member or basically a motion to be brought up for dismissal, and the council votes on it? I mean, really, that would be the way.
Well, what this did, this language changed the existing guidance, which is 4 regular sessions. So, but the 4 regular sessions, and this incorporates the special meetings, the work sessions, because there's a lot of work and business that gets done in some of that stuff. So, expanding. I agree with what you're saying. Let's
in just saying, okay, if you miss 4 meetings, it's up to that's their discretion. Maybe have to force the stuff. That makes sense.
No, I agree.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's the problem I have with this, and I'm going to tell you a real fast story, and it's going to take 30 seconds. It's the town next to where I grew up, so it wasn't the town I grew up in. Long story short, the council member and the city manager, who was a female, went and had extracurricular activities after hours in the city hall. They got caught, okay? They spent like $50,000 having research done that said basically this is something that shouldn't happen and it's ill-advised and you should dismiss these people. And the council used their discretion and left the city council member in because it was a popularity contest. So I think sometimes discretion, it becomes a popularity situation when there's a clear thing that was absolutely wrong and it's going to probably lead someday to a whole lawsuit. So I know where we're going, and I know we wanted to carve that thing out, but I also heard what Fred said, which was you have to be equal, even-handed in this thing, because it can become a popularity contest. Yeah, the member we don't like or is not liked gets voted out. The member that's gets away with murder who is liked, and that's not right either.
I was exactly before this to begin with. I just saw the logic and agreed to it. But honestly, if others have doubts about this one, I would be for dismissing it.
This is Fred. Let me make a suggestion. May solve most of the problems. You could insert the word excused. If they insert the word unexcused. So that if you had a medical condition or a circumstance that prevented you from coming to a meeting, then the appropriate thing to do would be to call somebody to tell them in advance you wouldn't be there. That's the way it's handled in other cities, and it's not a rigid policy, but if you simply can't be there due to a medical situation, then it's an excused absence, and that will not even trigger C4. And to me, that's mostly what you're concerned about is somebody that is not there to do the business of the city because they choose not to be there to do the business of the city. That's my comment.
Makes sense. I mean, Fred, that works. If we could, we might have to flesh that out with an ordinance to say what is excused and what's not excused. Like, obviously, if you get coronavirus, you're excused
But what's excused? Again, if you're doing city business and you're away on a training course, is that excused? Probably. If you're, I don't know, if you got tickets to the, concert, is that excused? Probably not, that works, but and then flesh out the detail later if we, to tighten it up if we have to. I mean, that's a better solution than just leaving it to discretion.
I think we've done a consensus. Plug the hole later.
I'll go with that.
Mike? Barb?
The only thing
Let me address that point. There's an Attorney General opinion that in normal times, as long as you have a physically present quorum, then people can call in and participate, although the Attorney General opinion makes it clear that that's not the preferred way of doing it. So if there was, once in a blue moon, somebody called in, I think you could live with that. If they were doing it every meeting because they wanted to be in Cozumel, then that's not a very good situation.
So, if I understand you correctly, Joe can't be considered part of this meeting?
Under the informal time. This is abnormal. This is in case there's an executive order from the governor that authorizes us to do stuff like this. And normally you could do it as long as you didn't have if you weren't relying on that person for the quorum. So, and we've done that before. We had a deadlock on the millage rate, and I think we called Glenn Gunn in the air. we got him, and we got that tie broken. So that was fine. But we don't normally do that, so that's fine. That's right. Dave Gaddis was talking.
They sort of frowned upon that practice also. I understand that in certain cases, like whenever we in the previous applications for prior councils was the Attorney General's opinion. You cannot call in and to comprise a quorum, but participation at the previous council meetings had been held, and even so far as a special vote. And again, every council can kind of make a ruling. All right. So the consensus on this basically is to use the word unexcused absence. Right? Add the word unexcused. I'm good with that. Okay. Approved. Next item. Okay. The next item is there's actually two items in section 4.402 and 4.03, and in each of those, you deleted the reference to the city treasurer, and the easiest one for me to explain that one is, let me read the first ballot question, which is article for section 4.02 of the charter titled appointment, and in article 4, section 4.3 of the charter entitled removal, you may amend it to delete references to the city treasurer as being appointed or removed by the council. And the answer is yes. That amendment should be included. The problem I have with the verbiage there is someone reading this on a ballot. Wouldn't it make a lot more sense if you just said, hey, this change is being made to reflect how we are doing business. We no longer basically have a treasurer. We outsource all of our financial affairs. So it's just bringing the charter into alignment with how we are doing business, rather than trying to have somebody figure out why they're removing someone from this position or whatever. Hey, we've already made the management and organizational change. We're just bringing the charter into alignment with how we're conducting business. I mean, just an easier explanation for a person reading the ballot verbiage rather than basically, I don't understand what's going on here. Why are we talking about appointments or removals? Hey, we don't use this person anymore. We outsource his job. We're just making changes to reflect the existing organization.
Well, good. Yes. I'm sorry. What I was going to say is, I believe Vice Mayor, what he said is absolutely correct, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, isn't there supposed to be an explanatory paragraph or sentence that follows the question? So what he just said would be in the explanatory paragraph. I think that's the way you would handle it.
Yeah, and it really comes down to the charter provision amendment. It requires that you send it as a yes or no question. So what I tried to do was the most organized question I could write. And you can also write a preface to the question, such as, in this case, in light of the city council employing the city treasurer as a contract employee, the rest of it will follow. That would be fine to do it that way.
It seems to me that this question is still open-ended for people not attending, and they may very well vote. I believe we have more people that attend council meetings, some people that do council meetings, and the questions should be worded because something about the fact of the position of treasurer has been removed from the city. Shall all references to city treasurer be removed? Something to that extent. I think they deserve an explanation in the question.
Okay, we have to give me a minute and I'll write you the explanation. You have to include the references to the code section, though, because that needs to be specific.
That's fine.
Okay?
I'm just afraid you're going to have a bunch of people that vote it down because they don't know what's going on, and they still think we have a city treasurer.
Right.
You guys know that?
If they vote it down, then we're really screwed, because then we're referencing something in order that the city exists.
Okay. All right. So we're going to amend that proposed ballot questions, correct? Article 4.
Here's what I would propose you to do. Preface the course question with, since the position of city treasurer has been outsourced as a contract employee, now article in the rest of the sentence.
And that I support. Gentlemen? I agree. One more time? That's fine.
Yes, and Glenn don't ask me to repeat it. The sentence that I wrote is the preface. Will say, since the position of city treasurer has been outsourced as a contract employee, shall Article 4, Section 1 and the rest of it continue.
Yeah.
And that frames what you're doing.
That works, sir.
Agreed. All right, so we'll find out. Now, except for the strategic plan, have we agreed to changes of the other or the unit? Other provisions? Yes. Going back to strategic plan. Hold on. This has been the most frustrating meeting I've ever attended. Okay. I'm not into technology, obviously.
It is our city.
And then I'm just technically looking with it. You don't have to pay for those. You take the paragraph on ballot.
The ballot question is what appears on the ballot. You don't have the whole text of what you're changing. Let me tell you what happened prior to that. There will be a resolution that would be presented. So you will make your presentation to the city council and tell them what changes you recommend they make and in what order they make them. And this exercise in the memo that we went over today is really what you want them to change in the immediate future. So once the council takes the regular recommendations for the immediate future, then there would be a resolution that's prepared. And the resolution would include all the things that are being changed, including the exact text, strikeouts, and the language of the ballot question. And that way you have an integrated document that if a citizen really wants to dig in and wants to know what words are being changed, you can hand them the resolution and they can read it to their heart's content. But for purposes of the ballot, you simply have to have something as according to the charter and very state law. It's got to be a yes or no question. Because anything beyond a yes or no question is simply far too complicated.
Fred, to that point, as I read the proposed amendment, the way the vice mayor's written it, the content is fine, but it's not in a yes/no question, and it seems to me that it's two separate questions the way it's written. So we would actually, the way because there's a part A and then there's a part B, which I think are going to be, you're not going to be able to make that one question with two parts. It's going to be two separate questions. So either we combine this, and if we're going to put it as on the ballot, then it has to be one question, and it has to be yes or no. This is more a statement as if it was an ordinance, and that's not going to work for the ballot, I don't think. You tell me.
Those proposed amendments were meant to be the verbiage to be written into the charter. And I would say that the place for those to be written in are section 2.045, paragraph 3 of the council, and they become paragraph 3 and 4. So you've got the existing section 2.045 now, general powers and duties of the mayor and city council. Under B, council, you insert those proposed amendments that I have written as paragraph 3 and paragraph 4. Now, the yes/no question for the ballot can simply be, should the city charter be amended so that the council is guided by a strategic plan? Something along those words. It doesn't have to tell exactly what the strategic plan is, but guided by some sort of strategic plan that sets a horizon or a guideline for the city to do business with a horizon of 5-10 years. Just something generic. You don't have to get too prescriptive in the actual ballot question. The proposed amendment is the verbiage to be inserted into the charter itself. The ballot question can just be a general thing. Yes, we're going to do business with a strategic plan. Yes or no?
I kind of like you said the proposed ballot question disabling it. Just use it like that in the charter, use those wordings. It says city, will utilize the strategic plan as a guideline and periodically review and revise the strategic plan on an annual basis. Yeah, that could be in one sentence. That that would work. Yeah, I agree with that. I would agree. Okay, that's what it's supposed to be.
I would support that, except I'm hearing two different things. The way it's written right now says to periodically review and revise the city's strategic plan. That I support. Annually, I think that may be too burdensome on the future councils. If they want to do it every year, they can. If they don't want to do it every year, it's periodic.
The goal, the reason why you want it every year is because every year you want an election cycle and new people are coming on with a new perspective and or new agendas.
Then they can ask for it. I'm sorry, but I see a burden every year of having to do the strategic plan analysis prior to a budget period, which is very cumbersome.
But the purpose also, you do it if part of the budgets, once again, everybody looking at the strategic plan saying, oh yes, priority number 1 is this, priority number 2 is this. So everybody goes into the budget cycle with a common baseline and a common review of what the priorities are for the city. Not just, oh yeah, I remember talking about the strategic plan a couple of years ago. I don't remember what the priorities are, but hey, I'm ready to vote on the budget. At the end of the day, the budget is the final bottom line business decision of the city.
I don't question the budget. I totally agree with that. But you're talking about two separate things that both can be very cumbersome to the council.
The cumbersome thing with writing it, the review of it is a one-day work session.
Yeah, but hang on a second. Okay, let's stand to your point, and it's I think it's a very valid one. I think you brought it up last time, and I think I used the same example last time. I'm going to bring it up again. Given our situation that we have right now, okay, which was totally unforeseeable, if that charter was changed, let's say last year, so let's say the charter changed last year and says we have to review the strategic plan before we do the budget. Okay, we may not even have another council meeting before we start on the budget, and we would be burdened in terms of required to review that strategic plan. I mean, it doesn't say what kind of review you have to do, but let's give it its due. It requires more than a half an hour review. I mean, if we get into a legitimate discussion about it, it took many meetings just to form it, and I could see it taking a while. We would not even be able to fulfill that obligation. So that's something to think about, whether it becomes a periodic thing or you say, an annual. If it's annual, you've got to do it, and you got to do it when we say it in the charter.
Well, it can be what you want it to be. It can be the first thing of the budget review is, did everybody take a look at the strategic plan? Yes. Any questions, any changes? No. Okay, let's get to the budget. There it is. The review. You're not being restricted where it has to be a work session or it has to be a committee. Just say you review it on an annual basis prior to the budget.
We talked about one thing before, and that was re-election here. To review it right after the new council sworn in. This will give them an idea of what's ahead of them. So is there any way to do it that way? Put it in the charter based on the new council or new council members are elected. You can use the charter. It's just a year or two in between there, but what do you think?
This is a thing that aligns and baselines the thinking for all the council members. You either agree to it or you don't, and if you don't, then you change it. And every time the council makes a business decision, writes a new ordinance, changes the budget, the first question they need to ask themselves is, does this align with the strategic plan. In other words, if you want to spend $500,000 on new hedges down Gulf Boulevard, the question you have to ask yourself is, how does that line item in the budget compete with putting in crosswalks and pedestrian warning signs, that sort of thing? You see the mismatch in
I want to answer that specifically. What you're looking at right now is the strategic plan is a living item. Yes, it doesn't end at the end of each year. It would continue. If you did not review it this year, it still sticks for the following year. Am I correct or incorrect?
If there's no change,
Exactly. So until somebody wants to make a change to the strategic plan, why does it have to be reviewed every year?
because once again, it's to remind what the priorities are for the city. It baselines everybody. A new person comes on the council. During the review process, he learns what priority number 1 is. He learns what priority number 2 is, priority 3 is. And guess what? When he goes into the budget cycle, he understands why some line items in the budget float to the top of the capital improvement plan and other things sink to the bottom. Because the things that bubble to the top of the capital improvement plan are supported by goals 1, 2, or 3 of the strategic plan instead of goals 4, 5, or 6 of the strategic plan.
Shouldn't this be part of the indoctrination of each council member that comes on board?
Yeah, and I've been preaching all. Listen, there isn't. When a new council member comes on, guess what? Hey, they should get the code of ordinances, they should get the personnel manual, they should get the sunshine law, they should get the strategic plan, and there should be an indoctrination. I agree with you, but there is none right now. So it's on a catch-can basis right now. We've got a strategic plan, you review it annually, everybody looks at it before you go into the budget cycle. The fact that we're having this discussion is we still haven't connected the dots that everybody has to have a common view of what's important around here.
Okay, I need to call the
a couple points. Okay.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, if you're calling the question, that's the end of the debate. All I was going to say is, if you're going to use the strategic plan as a rigid or semi-rigid way of evaluating all decisions, okay, there's 6 or 7 priorities. Yes, some are higher ranked, but it doesn't mean a lower ranked priority doesn't get priority. And
if you look at the way it's written just like Robert's Rules of Order, as a guide, not as a
right.
evaluation tool.
I just think if we're going to go and use this in a budget, it's not going to be, hey, has everybody reviewed their strategic plan? Anybody got any changes? Okay, we're good. Let's move on. What if somebody says, yeah, I got a problem with the whole thing, or I got a problem with 3 or 4 major goals and I want to reorder the goals? That could be a month of discussions or longer. I mean, so I just don't want to minimize this.
I'd like to make a motion. Sure, go ahead. I can make a motion that this be tabled until the next charter review committee. I mean, to the next version of the charter review committee.
No, I'm going to call the question prior to the discussion. The fact that we're having this discussion is we have not connected the dots on it. And the reason that we're getting pushback is because that's why we didn't have a strategic plan to begin with. So I'm calling the question, what's the vote on this thing? I'm not going to discuss it any further. I've talked myself blue in the face. You can either connect the dots on this thing. So, Chairman?
Before we do this, Fred, did you have something to say?
Yes, I will make a comment. In my other city I work for, we don't have an indoctrination, which of course has a negative connotation. When a new commissioner or council member comes on board, we have typically done an orientation, and the reason for the orientation is to notify, or for me, as a city manager, to cover primarily illegal requirements, the things that are in the charter, the way that the government's set up, and very importantly, the ethics portion of it, so that somebody is not immediately thrown into the deep end of the pool and having to immediately navigate all these things without some idea of the resources available for them. Going forward, as long as I'm here, I would advocate to city manager and council that you do a orientation for a new council member, and it would be very easy to fold into that discussion the strategic plan and have a discussion of that so that a new council member started their tenure knowing why that's important and what's in it. So that's my only comment, which in a way isn't relevant to what you're talking about, but it is in some respect.
Am I allowed to pose an amendment to the question before?
We haven't actually posed the question yet.
Calling the question.
Yes.
I would like an opportunity to make an amendment on this. Maybe this will work, where we can meet in the middle. Yes, annually. Because you have to look at it whenever you're creating your budget, provided that it exists in order. What I don't agree with, and I think should be stricken from it, is that and revise. And paragraph, and also in the question, should be removed, because we may not need to revise anything. At that time, we decide, while we're creating the budget, do we need to change something in the strategic plan? At least that forces us to at least take a look at it while we're doing the budget.
Having a city manager now that's going along with whatever other council wants to do. As a city manager, that wants to create his own budget, that is right. He needs to move that
I said remove.
What if he said revise is necessary? I almost took out the revise and just left it. When I first wrote it, I almost wrote it that way, but I want to leave the ability to change it if necessary. Not just review it, because then I think you're kind of stuck. What I'm saying is review it. If you don't like what's there, if something changes, revise it as you see fit.
I would accept revise if needed, or as needed.
Why don't you have the ability to change it?
But this way, we're not going through this whole review committee scenario where we're going line by line, saying, revise it, yes, priorities. And if we don't,
that's why the verb is in there as a guideline. It doesn't eliminate the possibility that for some subjective reason you may take those hedges on Boulevard and make it number one. It's not to eliminate that completely. It's just saying you use it as a guideline, just like we use Robert's Rules of Order as a guideline. We're not handcuffed to hold the meeting using Robert's Rules. Just as a guideline, you review it, and if there's changes you think are necessary, change it. Not just review it and your hands are tied to never change it.
It can be reviewed at any time. I mean, it's not just a one-time shot. So, I mean, if you review it in April and, somebody comes up with a new slant on things in July, you could review it again in July. It's it is an ongoing, changeable document. So there's nothing stopping us from.
I just made it as general as possible. I made it as preceding the budget cycle because, as I recall at the last meeting, we had a number of 60 to 90 days before the budget cycle, and I just said, let's again just make it a generalization. It shall precede the budget process. If you want to do it in April and the budget cycle starts in June, that's fine. I'm just saying you do it before the budget cycle. It makes sense to do the budget cycle, not after the budget cycle.
Absolutely.
You want to call it a question? There's been a request to amend it. How do we proceed? Do we vote on the amendment?
I'm fine with changing the language wise and necessary.
Yes. And where would that appear? Ballot question, where at the very last line, to periodically review and revise as needed the city's strategic plan. As needed. Okay. Exactly the way he has proposed the section, heading as needed. So let me read it out. The charter entitled General Provision is amended to require the city to utilize the strategic plan as a guideline and to periodically review and revise as needed the city's strategic plan.
And you
Somebody make a motion.
the language of the charter the same way.
Yes. I make a motion. I'll make a motion. I'll second that. And I'll second the motion. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, so we're all, it's unanimous. It is there. The only thing that was changed was as needed. I'm good with that. Congratulations. So, wait, Fred, you have a question?
Yes. And I take the document that I sent to you, and go through and make the changes, change my color on the red line, and then send it to everybody again, so that y'all can have basically a final version of this to us, so that it, unless there's an issue, I think I'll get it right, and I'll work with Patty to make sure I get it right. But that would be a good safety check, or you say we're finished with the committee. Is that a acceptable way to go forward?
Yes.
Could we include just a one-page executive summary, just the actual proposed ballot questions? And then if I have just the first page, just the ballot question, the proposed ballot question, and then this is attached so that I can go back and read it if I have a question. But it needs to be a standalone, so I can just read the part and say, wait a second, I don't know.
It provides a collection has to create a sample ballot based on what the city attorney creates, right?
Because my fear is that if it gives me this document and I start reading it, it's kind of pulling me along, and I understand that thing, but I want to read the sample standalone ballot question without any supporting data, so that I can say that makes sense or it doesn't make sense. I'm going to vote no on that because I just don't have any background information.
I think that's something that once the city attorney redoes his information, gives it to Patty can just put all that on one page, correct? That's not a difficult thing. Page purposes for cost.
That's easy to do. That's cutting and pasting in the case.
Okay. In that case, the duty report concluded.
Second, and Mr. Chairman, I have a question for you.
We never discussed
here
that.
yet, but I have a question. The remaining proposals that we had that we're not going to utilize with this ballot, but we want to utilize for the future, are we going to show that as an executive summary to the council saying this is what you should be looking at in future elections?
Future elections, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Because they should know what we've done. But my question, which I have to admit is valid, they never decided where this provision is going to be for the strategic plan question. Actually,
2.0. And those become 3.
Yeah, 3 and 4.
under B. Yeah, 1, 2. This will be 3 and 4. 3. And the only change to the 4 is we had the language revised as necessary. Revised as needed. That's okay. In that case, I think we've concluded the challenge of doing the Charter Review Committee. If I hear a motion, what's next? Sine die. Present what we have to council. That's our next job. Now, before it goes to council, did we see the final draft of what this is? I wanted to see, yeah. So we need more. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And I think it could be like literally a 10-minute meeting because we've resolved the whole thing. I will not do another meeting on the cell phone. We were looking at each other. That was this leading up to what I was going to ask. The next meeting, the short meeting where we approve the final draft, I don't want anyone here except Pat. And turn on speakerphone. Someone wants to come in. And that's fine, they can hear us on the speakerphone, but I think all of us need to stay home and meeting on phones. Because here, I feel like I'm in a small stadium. Yeah, I'm trying to phone, this is crazy. When you have a speakerphone that's on, it reverberates, and I can't hear properly either. That's what I'm saying. It won't do that if none of us are in this room. So, Patty, give us, we need to set up a time for a meeting. Keep in mind, folks, there's no rush. The next council meeting isn't until May. Next week, tomorrow. I mean, all we need is 4 hours now, correct? So, Monday or Tuesday? Is this city council meeting next week? No. They're canceled. Ah, okay. So we could do this a week from today. We could do it 2 weeks from that. The next council meeting is in May. And the phone-in conference. Perfect. What time Monday? 5:30 is good with me. 5:30 fine with me. Good. Monday was that it? Is that what we did? And it's a phone meeting. Okay, I didn't give the date. And then you'll get on the details, the code and all that. What's the date? 30th? 30th. Okay. The documentation. I'm going to have this all in a document for you. Maybe the easiest way for you to evaluate it is for me to just make changes to this and send you a new version of this, and you'll review it. But I'll do the executive summary with the ballot questions up front. Okay, perfect. Okay. Any other questions before I entertain the motion to adjourn? Accept the motion. Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Aye. Aye. This phone call is now ended.